Welcome everybody to the Leo Zegami show for our weekly show. Yes, because guys, we can hardly afford one show a week as we haven't really so many books and we haven't received really some substantial donations. So I want to thank though the people who made this show possible today. First of all, so thank you, Yo Uzumaki, and thank you to K. Bilan, yes, thank you both. And I would like to thank them as we usually do here with a nice applause from us. We like to do that with our vintage style applause. Here we go. Thank you so much. Thank you to Yuzumaki and KB Lan. And if you want to support the show, you can do it with GoFundMe or with the Cash App handle you can find together with my latest articles at riozagami.com. We have a lot of news to relate to you today. It's, of course, news connected especially to Donald J. Trump. I mean, as you have just viewed, one of Trump's latest posts gives us an idea of somebody who is pretty unhinged. I mean, I think most Americans at the moment are really suffering. And the fact that in 1 week, as the Wall Street Journal has just announced, the difference in the cost at the gas pump is of 125 millions. So 125 millions, imagine that. It's quite incredible, but we are in a situation where there is still no peace, not even any peace talks. And of course, Trump is not happy with Iran, and so the Strait of Hormuz keeps on being closed. And actually, if you pay Iran to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, then you get Trump's sanctions. So it's really a difficult situation, guys. And at the moment, Europe seems to be the place Trump is targeting most. Now, I never had great sympathies for Europe. You know, I was forced myself in leaving Europe because of the lack of free speech. I had to abandon Europe in 2019. I actually even changed my citizenship because there was no point in maintaining my European and Italian citizenship. But now, regarding what Trump is doing, I don't know if strategically this is a good thing. I mean, of course, he is reacting to the words that the other day the German chancellor brought up, accusing Trump of having no strategy in Iran. Here it is.
Amerikaner haben offensichtlich keine Strategie.
The Americans clearly have no strategy, and the problem with conflicts like this is always that you don't just have to go in, you also have to get out again. We saw that all too painfully in Afghanistan for 20 years. We saw it in Iraq.
Im Irak gesehen. Also, diese Geschichte ist.
So this whole affair is, as I said, ill-considered, to say the least.
Ich erkenne im Augenblick nicht, welche.
At the moment, I cannot see what strategic exit the Americans are now opting for, especially as the Iranians are obviously negotiating very skillfully, or rather, very skillfully not negotiating, and letting the Americans travel to Islamabad only to leave again without any results. An entire nation is being humiliated by the Iranian state leadership, particularly through these so-called Revolutionary Guards.
So, I understand. Trump got upset, but now, for the first time, abandoning Germany after the Second World War, after the sacrifice that was made by so many American soldiers to have a place which is also strategic, and now he suddenly wants to abandon. So that is the subject that I wanted to touch today, because if a Trump administration abandons Europe, of course, NATO's credibility is already, declining, but with that kind of choice, it will crumble. It will force the Europeans for a rapid military buildup and defense autonomy, which is something which could also be positive for, because if it was done, let's say, in a gradual way, maybe it could actually work out. But the problem here, the problem that we have is that this shift that could fracture the transatlantic security leaves Europe vulnerable to Russian aggression, and also potentially allows China to dominate once again also in that specific region with their influence. So what Trump is doing is actually helping the creation of a multipolar order, is actually helping China, is actually helping the Sino-Russian New World Order, which I have denounced since volume 7 of my Confessions. We saw what happened with King Charles. King Charles is not any kind of figure. He's also a guy whose family is traditionally the head of worldwide Freemasonry. And Freemasonry, the regularization is always through the United Kingdom Lodge of England, whose Grand Master is the cousin of King Charles, the Duke of Kent. So there is also that specific link there. But the problem with Trump, who actually says that on the way back from, and I hope that way back will be soon, from the Middle East, he wants to start another war. He actually wants to take on Cuba.
Cuba's got problems. We'll finish one first. I like to finish a job.
So this is the guy who said no more wars, America first, and all the rest. And now he's already projecting himself for, oh, well, let's just go to Cuba on the way back.
The way back from, what we'll do, on the way back from Iran, we'll have one of our big, maybe the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier, the biggest in the world. We'll have that come in, stop about 100 yards offshore, and they'll say, thank you very much, we give up.
So he thinks that simply bringing this ship in front of the coast of Cuba will be enough to humiliate and get the Cubans who fought the revolution, who were there for decades with the Castros, to simply give up everything. I mean, this is another strategic mistake. Is a little bit like thinking the Pahlavi dynasty could be replacing the Ayatollahs very soon. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. It was just like. Now, when it comes down to what is happening at the moment, we are, of course, assisting to what could become a security vacuum in Europe, immediately taking advantage of this security vacuum without US troops, intelligence, nuclear protection, that will always lead to the Sino-Russian, meaning Russian-China, having control over Europe. Imagine that. Europe, the very birth of our Western civilization comes from Europe, and we are abandoning this strategic asset. It's a little bit like, on our side, we always criticize what happened with Afghanistan. We saw the insanity of what happened the last few days of the occupation, and then the leaving all those weapons and everything, and that airplane full of people attached. It was crazy. We never imagined that could happen, but it will happen in a different way, of course, not in the same dramatic way with Europe, but Trump is announcing in the meantime 5,000 members of the US troops. They are being ordered to leave Germany, and then in the next few months he wants to basically leave Germany, leave maybe even Italy. The Italian press today published a video of Trump, who is not happy with Italy, Spain, and all the other countries who have not supported his and Israel's Sabbatean, Frankist, Epstein regime war against Iran, because that's what it is.
I'm not happy with Italy, and I'm not happy with Spain, and they feel it's okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Anybody that
with this thing about the nuclear weapon, this mantra, that is recited every time anybody opposes this war, you're going to have always the same reply, the same, but the problem is we leave Europe. That is wrong. That is strategically a big error. That is something that in the long run, America will pay the consequences of this action, will inevitably lose also their leading role in the post-Second World War order. And all this, why? To support Israel? It's just like... and then, of course, there is still those sycophants who are still grabbing on the crazy ideas that Trump will save the day and make their life better, when the reality is here in front of us every single day. When we go to the gas pump, when we go to put gas, but also when we go to the supermarket, when we order on Amazon, anything we do, we pay more. And so the golden age is not here. I'm sure that Trump is bringing the golden age to his elite, but we will never be participant of that golden age. At the same time, evangelical Christians are starting to become more and more a Trump-led cult. I mean, when he proposed himself as Jesus, he was simply stating something that, believe it or not, part of the evangelical community believes is really true, that Trump is some kind of messiah. Then we have, of course, his link with the Chabad Lubavitch movement and the Sabbatean Frankists, which I have denounced in this book. And that link means that Trump is not really a Christian. He's an opportunist Christian, which is a different thing. So politics, I think, is disappointing everybody, but the choices globally are still facilitating the rise of the Sino-Russian world order. Trump says that by taking these troops out of Europe, he wants to focus on Asia. Let's see. Because, like I said, strategically it seems rather idiotic to abandon Europe, which automatically will fall under the sphere of influence of China and Russia. The US will lose vital overseas bases, regional influence, which also, by the way, those bases are used to intervene in the Middle East. So there is also, then we have, Trump introducing high tariffs on European goods, and also now 25%, I think, on European car makers. And all this is happening, So facing this aggressive US tariffs, potentially as high as 30%, a loss of military protection, the European nations, in the end, are gonna maybe side inevitably with China to maintain the prosperity they needed to fund their own increased defense spending. They might even buy weapons from China. That would be a disaster. Beijing is actively positioning itself in all this as kind of like, you know, they're saying, they're not saying much actually. And that is the way. That is like they want to be perceived as the responsible, stabilizing force which opposes the chaotic force that today Trump's America keeps on emanating, unfortunately. So China is proposing itself as the champion of multilateralism, in direct contrast with the principle that has followed us since the end of the Second World War of US hegemonism. So China and the EU, that is the problem, because then the European interest becomes the Chinese interest, the Russian interest, the interests that are not America's interests. And so somebody says, you know better than, what is you know better than that? Better than what? Thinking that doing what Trump is doing today is actually helping Americans is ridiculous. The constant decline in the polls that we witness every single week when it comes to Donald J. Trump is a witness to what I'm saying. You know, most Americans agree. Trump behind the scenes is simply participating to the Great Reset. That's what he's doing. He's helping the Great Reset. And eventually that Great Reset is aiding people like Palantir. Palantir, we have discussed a bit their manifesto. Their manifesto is really scary. Their manifesto is something that really, I mean, once you go through that manifesto and you interpret it in the correct way, and you understand it in the correct way, then you understand, you know, because it's the manifesto of Palantir is written in a certain language. It was published on X by the official Palantir profile, and it's, in short, a reactionary sales pitch aimed at Trump and US ultra-conservatives that believe in this monstrous metamorphosis of Silicon Valley, which also embraces the idea of pushing their own form of Christianity. The smart city rhetoric is the Trojan horse for this type of project. The reality that the Pentagon has now forced all the AI company to, of course, work with but the problem is that we are witnessing every day the rise of the AI, of cyber Satan, which I've discussed for years in volume 6.66, in volume 7, in volume 9 of my Confessions. Trump's meeting with King Charles was a meeting based on one single thing: the fact that the brother Andrew Mountbatten Windsor will not end up in jail. And confirming that not only what came out of the FBI and the fact that their intention was not to interrogate Andrew, but to arrest Andrew as being co-participant in these crimes. And it's not me who is saying that. Ghislaine Maxwell, there is a leaked email, apart from the last few days, we also heard of a note that was left, a suicide note that somehow we are not allowed to see. But leaked emails suggest that Ghislaine Maxwell plotting to sacrifice big name for freedom, and one of her big names that she's bringing up is the name of the brother of King Charles. King Charles simply, see here, point to a recent report of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, who was arrested and stripped of his royal title after new details emerged. But in this email leak, it clearly shows that Ghislaine Maxwell wants to use the information she still has on many powerful people, including the brother of King Charles, but also other very powerful figures. Here it says, in fact, Barack, talking here about Prime Minister Barack, former Prime Minister Barack of Israel, is one of the only people to have interviewed Maxwell in prison, with one of Maxwell's brothers acting as a conduit. Daphne Barak, though, is not it's an Israeli-American journalist, okay. Trusted friend of Maxwell and her family for about 20 years. So they managed that. But in this situation, we notice that there is the will of Ghislaine Maxwell of wanting to get out of jail at any and all cost, even sacrificing people, bringing out, leaking out certain things to say, listen, I have the entire, knowledge about these people, so you better let me out of jail soon. That is really, but remember that all this is happening while Trump is fighting a war which partly covered up the entirety of the Epstein files who have never been released, who has created and generated a strategy for being able to shift the general attention from the Epstein files to something else. As I explained in my book, Zionism is a creation of the Sabbatean Frankists, simply just as the state of Israel, just like the late Barry Kamish used to say. The Sabbatean Frankist state of Israel, he used to call it. So here we are, of course, with these leaked emails that simply suggest that the Ghislaine Maxwell, while in prison last year, she had, she's basically trying to hold to that information and trying to convince people that they need to preserve her privileged information until she manages to get out. And I'm pretty sure, guys, that at the last day of his presidency, Trump will definitely pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. I mean, I'm pretty sure of that. There is going to be a moment at the end of his presidency in which he knows there is no, at that point, he doesn't have anything else to lose. And then we have all the stuff that is coming out with Melania Trump on this Italian state media show called Report. And it's a very, very relevant stuff that involves this Zampolli guy who introduced with Epstein and Melania to Trump. In reality, from the investigations of this investigative journalist in Italy, it's coming out that Zampolli even raped a woman who gave her confession to this show. His ex-wife, of course, that was deported out of this country so he could keep the child. And all this also with an audio from 2017, in which they promise Zampolli, and basically it's exchanging favors with Melania Trump and Donald Trump on covering each other. You know, there is this covering each other because the truth apparently is very heavy.
Storia Drake è una amica di Amanda che ha 7 processi contro altri uomini.
So he's trying to defend himself, but this Italian show reporter, which is broadcast by the state media Rai 3, is continuing a series of episodes dedicated to this Zampolli guy. Now, there is a lot of things that came out regarding this Zampolli, that, by the way, is born the same day as I'm born, but the guy looks like 20 years older than me. He's an incredible guy, how you can age by being probably so evil. The guy was connected to Jeffrey Epstein. He was about, it was all about power and money, and he had an agency of models that apparently was an agency of escorts. Now, he has threatened every journalist possible and imaginable in Italy, in America, everywhere, saying that they shouldn't release this information. Amanda Ungaro is the former wife that denounced Zampolli also for his violence. But then here there is another woman, this woman, Victoria Drake, that he says is simply a friend of the former wife, so not to be trusted. She claims she was raped by Zampolli in this testimony she gave.
New York, la notte tra il 6 e il 7 ottobre del 2023.
Paolo mi aveva mandato messaggi e cuoricini per tutta la giornata.
So we're talking about things that happened rather recently. We're talking about 2023. And apparently she was brought home, she was drugged, and then she doesn't remember, she says, anything. And she just felt that she couldn't breathe, that this guy was all over her, and she was trying to breathe. She was basically the victim, probably of some kind of drug. And I'm saying this guy Zampolli is actually at the moment a ambassador for Trump, and he's the guy who officially has introduced Melania to Trump. Here she's showing also all the medical evaluation after this alleged rape that happened. And the modalities of how it happened are quite incredible. But it's not the end of these investigations. In fact, tomorrow, apparently, Sigfrido Ranucci, the investigative journalist from this state media show called Report, says he's bringing out other material. Amongst the material he brought already out, there is also an interview with the aunt of Paolo Zampolli, who says that basically Paolo Zampolli, he forced in the end the sister, which is the mother of Zampolli, to be internated in a retirement home. So this is also then Zampolli went on a newspaper in Sicily saying that that was stated was fake, and that the aunt, I'm not talking about the aunt, had invented. I'm going to show you. This is Sigfrido Ranucci posted also this photo with that I guess is the mother and the aunt, and tomorrow he announces that tomorrow there will be another episode dedicated to Zampolli. Zampolli basically stated to this Sicilian newspaper that her aunt was paid to do the interview with the reporter. And Ranucci, who conducts the show report, says this is absolutely not true. Non corrisponde a verità. It's not true. It's a lie. So we're gonna, of course, see probably this whole thing developing. Zampolli, I repeat, he was the guy very close to Trump and Melania. Let me see if I have here, I can show you an image of them together. There is images around the internet, but here I think this one that was published by the Daily Beast might be one of the most known. That is Zampolli with Melania and with Trump. Basically, what happened is that when Melania suddenly went out and talked about Jeffrey Epstein, why did she go out and talk about suddenly? Suddenly she talked about Jeffrey Epstein. Well, apparently she heard about what happened, what was about to be released by the TV show Report in Italy. And at that point, she panicked because amongst the things that Ranucci has brought out, there is a recording which in a way implies that that they are covering each other's asses for something really, and what are they covering up? Apparently, they're covering up the fact that Melania was an escort. And so that seems to be the problem here. The fact that Melania was an escort. Of course, we want to continue providing you with details from these investigations in the coming episode, but this gives you an idea of why Melania was going crazy about Jeffrey Epstein, because it's all connected to Jeffrey Epstein. Remember, it's all connected to Jeffrey Epstein. The fact that, like Ranucci said on national Italian TV, or actually on one of Berlusconi's TVs, Rete 4, the other day, where he was guested, and where he's now risking, actually, because he wasn't on his own show, protected by state media. Of course, he is much more free of saying certain things, so he's also risking to be sued there. But he said that the Epstein files are the reason why we are losing all our democracy. So this is the problem here, that the world is going towards a dictatorship, which, by the way, who are the people involved with Palantir? Because we talked about Palantir, we cited Palantir, but Palantir, isn't it a company that was co-founded by Peter Thiel, who himself was involved with Jeffrey Epstein? So it's all interconnected. And in the meantime, the US withdrawal from Europe will signal to China that Washington might also lack the resolve to defend Taiwan. So at that point, this could tilt the Indo-Pacific military balance decidedly in Beijing's favor. With the US absent from Europe, like I said, Russia and China could very easily coordinate efforts to reshape the international order. With Russia expanding in Europe, while China expanded its influence in the Pacific and Arctic. Now, all these countries, of course, work for the Great Reset, because in the end, it's technology that rises out of all this. We know that in the year 2030, it's going to be the AI ruling over every single choice that is done. And of course, with the robots. But let me show you what Medvedev has said. Medvedev, former Russian president, who is still one of the main people in Putin's government.
Если европейские страны ссорятся с Америкой,
Okay, so we have here, I want to show you the subtitles, so I'm going to take off here to make it more clear. Here we go.
У меня вопрос: если европейские страны ссорятся с Америкой, а Америка со всем миром, то чем это может закончиться?
Коротко, победой России. Правильно.
Okay, so that's Russia winning in a game of chess. They definitely might win. Unfortunately, it seems like it's like we are aiding this way Russia and China in their rise, which I had talked about already in this book, which depicts the occult roots of the Great Reset to the populist roots of the Great Reject. Then I also dedicated, in my last installment of my Confessions, I dedicated a whole chapter to explain the influence that the Jesuits have in China. Even this Pope is, of course, connected to China and to the deal that was made between the Vatican and China in the fall of 2018. So that's how it works. They are advancing, and Trump, in the meantime, jokes that he's gonna take Cuba on his way back, and then he also admits he loves to dance to the gay national anthem.
No, she's done a great job.
And that Melania doesn't apparently like that.
She hates it when I do the thing on weightlifting. She says it's so unpresidential. And she hates when I dance, too, at the end, too. She hates when I dance to what's sometimes referred to as the gay national anthem. You know that. She hates it. You know, that song was number 5 32 years ago, and it went to number 1 32 years later. There's never been anything like it. It never hit number 1. It was number 5 32 years ago, and it went to number 1 for months during the last months of the game. We love that song.
Okay, so he's like in the middle of all this chaos. Americans paying 125 million more from one week to the other in gasoline. For Trump, the main problem is instead talking about rubbish like the fact that YMCA was number 5, and because of him now is number 1. Who cares? But at this point, there is still people who believe in all kinds of things. And I'm pretty shocked that the QAnon saga has not yet ended. I mean, it seems to still... No? This week, we had the closure of InfoWars. And I made a post on my wall saying, I'm glad that, I was part of it. That's it. It's the end of an era, of course, the closing of InfoWars, and everybody, but Alex Jones is still continuing. InfoWars included also banned video, and thousands of videos have been removed, including the videos from our own channel, the Leo Zagami Show on Band of Video. So it's not about only Alex Jones. Alex Jones will continue, of course. He will continue on X, on Rumble, and everything else. But I'm talking about Infowars. Infowars, as Infowars Media, as Band of Video, is finished. And for that reason, all our videos that were uploaded there are no longer present. When you go on the channel, you get off air. It was definitely, after 27 years, a historic moment. Like I said, I was glad to have participated for part of it. And a lot of you who are following me today met me for the first time also through Infowars, though I was around a long time before, because as you know, this year we celebrate 20 years of Illuminati Confessions that started in the fall of 2006. And from 2006 to 2015, me and Alex didn't work. Actually, Alex and me had a bit of a beef going on for some things he had said about me, blah, blah, blah. But then he came to Rome and he personally apologized, and then I started a collaboration which lasted a few years. It's the end of a season. And for those, like I said, to say, oh, but Alex is continuing. Yes, of course he's continuing, but it's no longer Infowars. I don't think that what the courts have done is naturally, is just, because I think that they pay, fining over $1 billion, incredible amounts. Of course, it might have been fake news. Of course, it was fake news, but the problem wasn't the fake news. The problem was that, of course, Infowars had attacked the system over and over again, and for that reason, I guess they wanted to close down the whole thing, which eventually they managed. I remember one thing, that when the lawyer in charge of the bankruptcy came in, the first thing that they did was to have my books out of the Infowars store. Infowars store was on a lifeline for the last couple of years. But the choice that was done, the first choice that was done for survival, was to ditch my own books. Because that's what the system wanted my books out of the Infowars store. So there must be something good in these books. There must be something good that the system doesn't want you to read. Somebody is asking me if I have any information on Poland. Poland is unfortunately stuck in the European technocracy, in the European dictatorship. There is not much we can add to what is happening in Poland. Poland is next door to Ukraine. And Poland is, of course, once America abandons Europe, then the fears that the people always had that the influence of Russia might come back. Once upon a time, Poland was under the control of the Soviet Union. Then CIA, through the Vatican Bank, pushed millions of dollars through to the Solidarność, which is the organization that eventually will free somehow, will prepare Poland to its democratic future. And so there was Lech Walesa, there was a whole period which I remember very well as a child. I think that Poland is, of course, the center, historically speaking, of the emergence of the Sabbatean Frankist cult. What happened, even the Epstein family, they made their money and then from Poland they ended up in Prague and then Vienna. Their family branched out, though originally, like most Sabatian Frankist family, from Poland, because Poland and neighboring Ukraine were the epicenters, like I explained on my book, The Rise and Fall of Frankist Monster. It was the epicenter of the Sabatian Frankist virus. So that's what happened. It kind of like Poland will unfortunately risk to probably fall under. I mean, Europe in itself, it's very fragile. Europe is very fragile, but also the problem with Europe is the lack of real freedom of speech. So you can't even go and talk the truth if you are in Europe. I noticed one thing when I was living in Europe. For example, Germany. Germany is one of the countries with less alternative news than anywhere else. There's no counter information to the state narrative. And so that is Germany. Germany is still controlled by those agents from the former Stasi, which were just as bad as the ones from the former SS. Actually, some of the former SS ended up in the former Stasi. So when Germany was divided in two, and then when they reunited the two Germanys, that mentality of spying upon your neighbor, was still very hard to fade out. Believe me. Moving forward with yet more information for today's show, while we also want to thank once again Io Uzumaki and Kay Bilan, who have made it possible. We are discussing Europe and the possibility now that they are abandoned, their reliance on China, especially for critical minerals, which they deem vital for their so-called green transition. Now, the problem, the other day, somebody was asking me, how should we cope with all this? Because, I mean, is the solution having an electric car if there is a crisis of the fossil fuels? Well, even the fossil fuels go through refineries, and those refineries, like in the case of California, when the system decided to close most of the refineries, now the prices have, of course, skyrocketed, and we are in a situation which is very bad because California doesn't have really the possibility of getting their oil, if not through the sea. And shutting the refineries it's problematic. But the refineries also demonstrate that, yes, you can be more independent with your fossil fuel car. But in the end, the only independence in the future can be created within a small community in which you get horses, you get, like the Amish. The Amish will not suffer the same kind of crisis we suffer. You have to go back to that kind of modality. I mean, horses, donkeys. I mean, I know it sounds like I'm projecting you back in the medieval times, but if we want to be independent, we have to be independent. First of all, we need to have the water. So you need to have a spring, you need to have a river, you need to have water, because water is another of those things that the elite has tried to grab for years here in America, and they are essential, of course, for all of us. So, I mean, without water, we can't sustain ourselves as human beings, and they want to have complete control over the water resource everywhere. So if you want to create an off-the-grid situation, you can't create it without the water. And then, if you want to create an off-the-grid situation, you think that the electric car is the solution. Remember, the electric car is like I explained even in my books, volume 9, volume 7, is something that can be controlled and hijacked at any moment, because any Tesla has software, any Chinese car, electric vehicle. Fortunately, we don't have them here in the United States yet, but they are already just an hour and a half from here in Mexico, full of electric cars. But those electric cars can be controlled, rely on AI, rely on constant software updates that can bring, of course, your car to simply, at one point they decide you can't drive your car. They just, from a distance, screw up your software or whatever, and that's it. So the electric cars, in theory, they can be recharged if you have solar panels and whatnot. But the control that can be exercised by what I have always defined as cyber Satan, the AI, it's enormous. So they can limit you. They can limit you in where you can go, how many miles you can do, and all the rest. And at the same time, though, I said the fossil fuels are only, they are also controllable, because you can just control the refineries, and at that point you control everything else, and it makes you subject to dependency. Somebody is saying to me in the chat that when you talk about the Kalergi plan and how it will destroy Europe, many thought it was just another conspiracy theory, but you make you make a bullseye, so you know what you're talking about. 10 years ago, 11 years ago to be exact, I wrote on InfoWars one of my first articles published there on the site that was dedicated to the Kalergi plan, and I also cited the Kalergi plan of that documentary we did with Alex Jones in Rome. Unfortunately, that's where we are heading to. And it's a sad truth, when you see things that you have forecast in some way and they're manifesting, is not always a great thing. In any case, we are moving towards a situation with the AI which is unstoppable, and of course, there is also some things that might happen thanks to a simple chatbot that might scare you to death. Let me show you something here. I found out today that a Stanford biosecurity expert says AI chatbot gave him a blueprint for genocidal bioweapon, including step-by-step instruction for modifying deadly pathogen and conducting mass transit attack. So I'm talking about a AI chatbot. A Stanford University microbiologist and longtime government biosecurity advisor called Dr. David Relman has revealed that an AI chatbot handed him a detailed, unprompted plan for engineering and deploying a genocidal bioweapon capable of mass casualties. That's because cyber Satan wants us dead. Remember that once the AI takes control with the robots and then the drones and everything else, then humans are expendable, and of course they will plan mass casualties also thanks to something like this. This was, they claim, an accident that occurred during a formal safety test. And it happened last summer, so in 2025, but it already highlights how the leading AI models are lowering the perceived barrier of bioterrorism, and they're shifting it from expert level to simple prompting. So anybody could manufacture bombs, create mass casualties with a biological warfare weapon. I mean, all kinds of things. It's quite shocking if you think about it. But this is the reality we're living in, because we have not yet realized all the dangers of the AI. And even when they realize the dangers of the AI, it seems that people tend to, governments tend to think that they can still keep the genie under control, that they can still keep it in the bottle, that they can still, issue some safeguards and be fine with it. But it's gradually changing the situation. I'm thankful for all the people who have followed me today. I must say we have a lot of people who are following us and who continue to support this show. I am about to publish in the coming weeks a new book with a completely different subject. For the moment, I hope that you have at least, you got this book here, which is still very relevant on one of the most important subjects, a book that is the only one, to my knowledge, which connects the Sabbatean Frankist to Jeffrey Epstein and his milieu of pedophiles. Jeffrey Epstein, whose suicide note is now finally surfacing after 7 years. And what the death note reveals, at least we can have some. Not all of it is, of course, made possible for us to, but we can at least have some information because this sealed Epstein suicide note, allegedly found in 2019, that now resurfaces after 7 years, is raising new questions on his death and the investigation gaps in this case, which are enormous. I mean, there is even people who think Jeffrey Epstein is still alive. But is this suicide note genuine, or is it simply coming out so that people can finally say, okay, he killed himself? Guys, it seems like there is too many indications that he killed himself. The indications are that he didn't kill himself, that they killed him. I mean, Epstein didn't kill himself. That was, remember, one of the mottos that got even Trump re-elected. It's incredible, Epstein didn't kill himself. It was like a mantra 4 or 5 years ago in the MAGA community. But now, of course, the MAGA community prefers to turn the other way. And that is really sad, turning the other way. We have, though, some people who follow us in Europe who sent me this upcoming exhibition, who apparently is dedicated by this artist. A guy who follows us in Europe sent me this, saying, I'm going to go there to this exhibition and I'm actually going to read some passages from your book. This exhibition is called Faces of Courage. It's fighting abuse and raising awareness by this Stephanie Heyman, who apparently is an artist, and it's taking place on the May 6th, and it's in an art gallery. I don't know exactly where, if it's France. Personally, I haven't really investigated too much, but the guy who sent me this said, I will be there and I will be reading some passages from this book. I'm glad that he has made this choice. I want to say hello to him, and I want to thank him for sending me also this, because I think it's important that that my book, as well as, of course, the biography published posthumously of Virginia Giuffre, that will also be read. So thank you so much, Benji Remu, who sent this banner from this upcoming event. And we will hopefully see each other next week. If there is no ulterior support from the sponsors, though that would be very difficult for me, because I'm going to have to dedicate myself to finish the book and do other things, guys. I mean, we are trying to at least bring you this show once a week. But remember that with the current cost of electricity and expenses that we have, simply by putting on the equipment and air conditioning in the middle of the desert, where already for the last few days temperatures today was almost 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And so that brings up the cost of production. And so without your help, we can't carry on this show. So please support us with your donations, and also with the purchase of these books, including Christie's cookbook, which is a masterpiece when it comes to transforming your kitchen in a 5-star Italian restaurant. The last thing that we had was a fantastic lasagna that we did yesterday for our wedding anniversary. It was truly fantastic. It was a work of art, guys. I mean, lasagna as a work of art. Lasagna is spinach lasagna. Of course, here I can show you a beautiful photo of this spinach lasagna. Here, fantastic, guys, fantastic. We will see each other hopefully next week. Please subscribe to all my channels. Put also the bell so you get eventually the notification. And here we go. Have a great week wherever you are around the world. Let's pray for an ending to this conflict, return to regular business in the Strait of Hormuz. That would be great. Otherwise, we will unfortunately see some very bad things happening, which are already manifesting, and they're only going to get worse. But we are ready. We are preparing. We're not going to be caught unprepared by this end time scenario we have been announcing for many years. See you next week.
Illuminati want my mind, soul, and my body. Secret society, I'm trying to keep it on.
Drake è una amica di Amanda, ha 7 processi contro altri uomini. Io sono con lei, matta da legare.